Hello, it's going to be a great day for the Gateway, and we're going to kick it off by having a wonderful Gateway Examiners meeting. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you have two pieces of vital information. The first is a copy of the Gateway Examiners Manual. It is your responsibility to make sure that you have read the Gateway Examiners Manual in its entirety before we have our first day of testing. You will sign that you have read through the manual and that you understand all that is in there. If you have any questions regarding the manual, make sure that you pose those to me before we start testing. The other piece of information that we're going to be going through today are the Gateway Examiner meeting notes. So make sure that you have that and you follow along as we go along. On the first page of these notes are our responsibilities of being an examiner. It's important that we follow and make sure we do all the responsibilities that is given to us from both the county level as well as the state level. First, you have to participate in training like we're doing here today. You have to review and follow all the procedures as far as handling the materials. You have to count everything and make sure the accuracy of those counts. You must ensure the security of all the testing items before, during, and after testing. You need to make sure that you provide all of the students the materials that they need, including number 2 pencils, pens, etc. You need to make sure that the accuracy of the students' FTE and GTID numbers are done on the answer sheet, and we'll get more in depth about that in a moment. You need to make sure you're following all the procedures, again, that's set forth in that examiner's manual. Make sure you're going by what it says and not making up your own rules. Maintain control of the testing situation. Make sure that the students stay on task. Don't let the students leave unless there's an emergency. No cell phones are permitted on the person of the students, and we'll go in more depth about that in a moment. You'll make sure that you've counted everything prior to the students leaving. Make sure that you're receiving everything back that you have given to the students. You're going to inspect the answer documents for stray marks. Make sure that the form numbers are coded each day correctly. You're going to return everything back to me, and you're going to make sure that there's no content-related materials on the board to help the students. All right, on page 2, this comes from our state guidelines as far as being an examiner for a test. Failure to follow any of these procedures could have an adverse effect on your teaching certification. So it's very important to understand these and abide by these. First, you can't give them access to the question or the prompts beforehand. You can't copy or reproduce the test in any way. You can't alter or interfere with their responses. That means that you can't help them on the test. You can't give them the answers. You must follow all the security regulations as far as the distribution of the test. You could only use the test booklets for the purpose of the exam and no other purpose. You can't participate, direct, aid, counsel, assist, encourage, or fail to report any of these prohibitive acts. And you must follow all of the administration directions. All right, before the test, you must read, again, the examiner's manual prior to testing. You're going to pick up your materials at least by 7 a.m. in E204. That is the command center upstairs in E Hall. Make sure you come in enough time to count your materials before testing starts. We should be there no later than 6:30 and probably before then if you would like to come early to count your materials. While you're in the command center, you're going to receive your bucket, and it's going to be your responsibility to count and record each of the testing items. There will be a blue inventory sheet with your bucket, and it will state how many of each item you will need to have in there. So you count, you make sure that it corresponds to the inventory sheet. If there's a problem or an issue, then you report that to myself or Miss Hardy immediately. Now, once you leave the testing room and once you sign off that you have taken this material, those testing items are your responsibility. If you have to step out of the testing room, you take those materials with you. If for some reason you have to go to another location, the bathroom, go back to your room or anything, bring it back to us and make sure that that material is kept safe and secure. All right, now if students come to your room that are not on your testing roster, you are to send them immediately to see me in E204. You do not, under any circumstances, test someone that is not on your testing roster unless myself or Ms. Hardy or another administrator tells you to add them to your roster. The students are placed in their rooms for specific reasons, and it's important that they test in that room. So again, if a student's not on your roster, have them come see me. Now, once you have started testing, once you have started reading the directions in the manual, do not allow another student into the room. We're going to wait just a few minutes to make sure that we don't have any late buses, but once you start reading directions, then no other students should be able to enter. If for some reason a student comes after you started reading directions, then please send those students to E204 as well. Now, once the students have started to take the test, you're going to take attendance on the blue attendance sheets that are provided. Make sure you just check the boxes to the students that are present and tape that on the outside of your door, and we'll collect those. All right, during the test, the form number for each test must be coded accurately on the answer documents. That's to ensure that the test papers are graded correctly. So make sure you also record these numbers on your yellow testing roster that is provided for you. Also, the correct content area must be bubbled in, whether it's science or social studies. All right, each student must initial the appropriate box on the testing roster that they've received all the material. Also, they must initial when they turn all the material in. So each student is going to have the following items. They will have an answer document, a test booklet, a black pen, a pencil, and then a calculator for the science day. So the only material on a student's desk should be the material I just told you. All other belongings need to be up in the front of the room. Now, also make sure that the students are only using a number 2 pencil on the demographic portions of the answer documents, and then they have to use a normal black or blue color pen on their final answer. They cannot use whiteout. They're also not allowed to use dictionaries, thesaurus, or any type of other device that should help them. Also, there cannot be any graphing calculators or ones that store text. All right, cell phones. All right, cell phones are the biggest problem when it comes to the gateway. Students are very tempted, if they do not understand the question for the gateway, to go and try to research material online in order to help them. This is the most cheated on test that we have here at Shiloh High School by far. So it's going to be your responsibility to make sure that the students understand and know that this type of activity is not allowed. So you have to be up and around, walking and monitoring the entire time during this test. So you have to be very vigilant. You can't bring anything with you. You can't bring your laptop. You can't bring anything to read. You must be 100% focused on this test and making sure that it is given properly and that you're watching the students at all times. Now, our procedure for cell phones will be that you will be issued a set of 30 lunch sacks. Each lunch sack will have a number on it, 1 through 30. That number corresponds to the number on the roster for that student. So for instance, if Nicole Kennedy is number 4 on the testing roster, then she'll place her cell phone in bag number 4, and so on and so forth. Also, there's going to be a part on the roster where you will indicate whether or not a student has turned in a cell phone or not. So make sure that you're keeping track of that. So the cell phones need to be off. Now, if you encounter a situation where a student has a cell phone or you have reason to believe that the student is using a cell phone during the test, you need to place the Mr. Sears Please Come See Me sign out on your door. Then myself or someone else will come and check with you. So be prepared to tell us what you think has been happening. But at no time should you interrupt the student or make a big deal of it inside the testing room, because we want to make sure that we are keeping a proper testing atmosphere for not only that student, but for the rest of the students in the class. So once you tell me what's going on, if you say, well, it just beeped, or you thought that the student was looking at it, then you need to let me know, and then I will be able to deal with the situation. I do not want you confronting the students at all. No scratch paper is allowed on this test. The students are allowed and definitely encouraged to write inside the test booklet. This is where they're going to make all their notes. This is where they're going to provide all their graphic organizers and prepare to do their best on this test. Also, the students are allowed to use highlighters. We do not provide highlighters, but if a student wants to use those, they're more than able to use highlighters to help them on the test. All right, now be ready to test as promptly as possible. We are going to be short on time. Time is going to be very critical towards us. So once myself or Ms. Hardy or another member of our team lets you know when to start, go ahead and get started as soon as possible. Now, the timings for the test. It should only take about 5 or 10 minutes to get everyone situated, get all the material passed out according to the rules of the manual. The students receive 125 minutes of testing, unless they have accommodations, and we'll go over that in a moment. And then there'll be a short amount of time to collect the materials at the end. So make sure that you're writing on the board the start and the stop time. That's very important. Restroom. Now, if a student needs to use the restroom, it has to be an emergency. Please encourage the students to use the restroom beforehand. But if a student has to go to the restroom, there is a restroom pass in your red folder in your bucket. The student must write their name, the time they left, and then the time that they returned. You need to write that information down. It's very important for us to be able to document how long students were in and out of the restroom. We will have monitors in the hallways, so we're going to only allow one student to enter in the restroom at a time. So limiting the amount of restroom trips that you send students on will be very important. All right, again, there's going to be no communication between students in any way during the test. It's your responsibility to make sure that they just focus on their test. All right, in the event of a fire alarm, hopefully this will not happen, but our procedure for this is that you need to stand at the door with the bucket. The student will place their answer document inside their test booklet and place it in the bucket on their way out the door. Since we're testing in E-Hall mainly, we will go to the parking lot, the student faculty parking lot. You need to stay with your test takers and make sure that they're not discussing anything about the test. So hopefully we'll not have to utilize this, but at least we have a plan in place if it does happen. All right, after the test is over, you need to collect, it may be a good idea for you to collect materials as the students finish. If you're sure, you can ask the student, are you sure you're finished? And then you can gather their materials. I would like to have the answer documents as well as the test packets in alphabetical order. So it's important for you to go ahead and do that for me. At no time should the students be standing up to bring you the testing material. The students need to remain seated. That's going to minimize the ability for students to cheat. So make sure that you're following that rule and go and get the particular testing materials from the student. Now, once you have everything turned in, you're going to count. Make sure that count corresponds to the count that you left with from our testing room. And then at that point in time, you're going to press the button and let Ms. Cheney know that you have finished with testing. At that time, one of either myself or another person administrator or someone will come to your room and they will count all of your material. We are staying all the way through the end of third period, so students will not be dismissed. So make sure they stay in your classroom. Even though you're finished, other people may not be finished around you, so please do not allow the students to leave en masse to the restroom. Do not allow them to get loud. They need to just remain quiet. But once the inventory has been the testing material has been counted, the students may get their belongings and go back to their seat. Troubleshooting. If for any reason you need my assistance or someone's assistance during the test, please put the Mr. Sears, please come see me sign out. This can range from you think somebody may be cheating, something has gone on in the test you feel funny about, or you have questions about, please put that sign out and ask. If you need a restroom break, you put the sign out. And please remember that we are covering over 30-something rooms. So if you do have to use the restroom, simply go and do that as quickly as possible and come back so we can cover other classrooms as well. If an emergency happens, a medical emergency or something that requires the button to be pressed, press the button and let Ms. Cheney know what's happening, and we'll come as soon as possible. All right, now for our students, our special education students and our EL level students, or anyone that receives extended time, you will have a green accommodation sheet inside your bucket. It will indicate all the students in your room and if they do or do not have an accommodation. Now, if a student receives extended time, they receive extended time, so please make sure we are legally bound to provide this for our students. I'm going to be coming around towards the end of the test to see if we have any students that are going to require quite a bit more extended time, and I will get those students and take them to another location so we can finish with the bulk of your room. Those students who do receive extended time, there is a portion on the roster for you to indicate what time they finished. And it is important for us to know that for IEP purposes. Also, at the top of the roster, there is a place for you to mark whether or not, or the time that you started the test. All right, on page 6, you will see the listing of examiners and what rooms you are in. Most examiners are working on the test on both days if you're primarily a 10th grade teacher, but we do have some teachers who are only an examiner on one day. Also, some of the examiners are working for specific periods and sharing with another teacher. So if you have any questions regarding this, please make sure you let me know as soon as possible so we can work this out prior to testing. On page 7, I have some other duties that are spelled out. Our VIPPP, these are our teachers who help monitor the hallways as well as students' trips to the restroom. So those teachers, I can provide you with more specific directions at a later time. So a couple of reminders as far as students in your class. You may or may not have all of your students, if you're an examiner, that will be testing. If they are not testing, then they're going to report to the theater during that period that they have you. We're going to keep an accurate roll. We have a roster that they're going to check off, so we will be doing attendance for those students who come to the theater. It's your responsibility to provide them with something meaningful to do down there. We will have plenty of coverage and of people to watch those students, but please provide them something that they can finish in the theater. Also, teachers, our e-hall teachers that I'm displacing for the test will more than likely be using your classrooms during first through third period. So I want to make sure I reminded you that they will be a teacher that will be occupying your classroom during this time. All right, teachers, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Make sure that you do it as quickly as possible. That way we can resolve anything prior to the test. So I know I'm excited for the Gateway coming up, and I know you're excited as well. So here's to a great Gateway 2015 testing season. Thank you.